Here's the scoop. In this game, you've basically got two hands to put your money on. One's called the banker's hand, and the other's the player's hand. Now, here's the catch. You can throw your bet on either of them. It's really up to you. Think about it. You've got the freedom to choose. Isn't that cool? But remember, you've got to place your bets before the cards hit the table. It's all about timing, making that moment count. So, make sure you have your decision locked in before those cards are dealt. Here's the deal. Each side player and banker gets two cards. Interesting, right? It's like setting up a mini duel. Picture this. A player, or the casino operator, whoever's holding the shoe, slides out the first card and places it face up in the player's box on the felt table. Then, they pull out the next card and pop it in the banker's box. And don't blink, because it happens fast. The house deftly handles another card for the player, and then the second card for the banker. It's all quite methodical, really. By the end of the dealer's first round, both the player and banker have two cards each. Voila! The game set into motion. So, once the cards are dealt, it's time to reveal the point totals for both hands. Here's how it works. Tens and face cards are worth zilch. Nada. Every other card carries face value, and aces come in at a measly 1 point. Simple enough, right? Now, let me throw a twist your way. If the total of the hand hits over 10, you only consider the second digit. For instance, if you get a 9 and a 6, you might think it's 15. But guess what? That actually counts as a 5-point hand. Just gotta love the quirks of the game. Here's the kicker. To win, your bet needs to be on the hand that's closest to 9. So, place those baits wisely and hope for the best. It's one of those moments that can make your heart skip a beat. Here's the scoop. If either the player or the banker scores an 8 or 9 with their first two cards, then boom, that's a natural win. And the round wraps up right then and there. It's like a sudden, dramatic finish. As soon as those cards reveal an 8 or 9, the game is done and dusted. There's no more dealing, no more waiting. The bets that were made are immediately cashed out. Just like that. It's the kind of swift resolution that keeps the adrenaline pumping. First things first, you have to check the point totals. The player's hand is always wrapped up first. If the player's total is 8 or 9, that's it. No more cards. The player stays put with that hand. Now, if the total is 6 or 7, they also stand firm. But here's where it gets interesting. If the total is anywhere from 0 to 5, the player does snag a third card. Unless, of course, the banker has 8 or 9. In that case, the banker just takes the win without any further fuss. Pretty straightforward, right? So, keep those point totals in mind and watch the cards closely. If the player stands pat, meaning they don't draw any new cards, the banker's decision is relatively simple. They'll draw another card if their hand total is between 0 to 5, and they'll stick with what they've got if it's 6 or 7. Now, things get a tad more nuanced when the player does draw a third card. Here's the breakdown. If the player's third card is a 9, 10, face card, or an ace, the banker will draw if they've got a 0 to 3, but will hold steady with a 4 to 7. If the player's third card is an 8, the banker draws with a 0 to 2 and stays with a 3 to 7. If the player's third card is a 6 or 7, the banker will draw with a hand of 0 to 6 and stay with a 7. If the player's third card is a 4 or 5, the banker draws with a 0 to 5 and stays on 6 or 7. If the player's third card is a 2 or 3, the banker will draw with a 0 to 4 and stay with a 5 to 7. It's all about knowing when to draw and when to hold steady. Once you get the hang of these rules, you'll understand the flow of the game a lot better. It all comes down to those critical decisions and how the cards fall. So, you've got all the cards on the table. Now what? It's time to figure out the winning hand. This part is pretty straightforward. The hand that gets closest to 9 takes the crown. Here's a little twist though. If both hands end up with the same total, it's a tie, and neither side wins or loses. It's a bit of a stalemate situation. Now, a quick heads up for those betting on the banker's hand. Occasionally, there's a commission taken from your winnings. It's a small price to pay for betting on the banker, but definitely something to keep in mind. So, with all the cards laid out, just remember to zero in on that magic number 9.